The Blend. It is Tuesday night, and we have an incredible treat for you tonight. We're going to be introducing one of the new members of our wonderful community at Balance and Bliss in this building. So Angel Black will be here, but first introduce Cara, because boy, we had a hell of a week this week.
I know, it was a lot. It was a lot. Busy
a lot
week.
Going on.
Last week was busy. This weekend was busy. Oh my gosh.
And we're a little bit run down, but it's okay, because it all started with our dear friend Papa Chops, and he made my kids' weekend because a couple, actually all three of them, got haircuts at Berkshire Barbers. And
yeah, they were really excited.
And it's quite an experience there. There's Arden. He loves his cut there. So Papa Chops, we love you, man.
We had Papa Chops on the show.
Well, yeah. He's the man. And so if you're a barber, you know what's going on in town. So it's always great to check in with the barber every once in a while. And Papa Chops, we had a great conversation. And then the reason they got their haircut was because we had a very special birthday. And by the way, it was Cara's birthday last week.
Yeah, my birthday was last week.
We covered that last week. Yep. But it was also my stepdaughters and Cara's daughters.
So Sophia's birthday is actually October 10th. But it was really hard to narrow down a date to have a surprise party. She is a hard kid to surprise. So her dad and I decided to throw her a surprise party. He's a phenomenal chef, so I kind of wanted him to do the cooking rather than have someone else cater. So I was really excited when he said that he would definitely cater it. We did it together. I decorated. And she was so surprised. She's still kind of on cloud nine from the party. But yeah.
At the Rusty Anchor, and boy, we've had some really great parties at the Rusty Anchor.
Yeah,
but one of the reasons we had it there and at this time was because they shut down for the season. Yeah. So the Rusty Anchor, I can't imagine a nicer. Of course, there's proprietors and there's some other places on the lake, but it's really beautiful out there.
Yeah, it was a beautiful night, Saturday night too. We really lucked out because, we were fully prepared to have it inside because you never know in late September, early October. But it was great. So we were able to set the food up right outside under the awning. They had a great sound system. We had an iPad. We just had to switch it over to parental controls so we didn't have... I
think that was my mom who did that. She was like, I don't...
My sister helped me. I was like, I don't know how to do it.
How do you even do that? So, of course we know how to do that.
Oh, yeah, because the kids were changing the music and, You know
how that goes. So, and Susan Corncolda says, "Happy birthday, Sophia." Yes.
Thank you, Susan.
It was a wonderful, wonderful evening. And then the other thing that came out, we had a whole bunch of stuff come in the mail last week. We were excited because there is a publication that Cara has here, and it's really cool. You can hold it up.
Really?
You'll be seeing it in doctors' offices and dentist offices near you sometime soon. But it's Start Healthy. Healthy.
Wellness magazine. So I figured, with marketing efforts, there's a lot of different avenues that you can go with that. But when we go out to breakfast and sometimes out to dinner, we gravitate to the tables with all the magazines. There's all kinds of magazines, and we always go and grab a magazine. And I'm like, you know what? Rather than put an ad in certain areas, papers or whatever, I'm going to try this. And so I get to put my own spin on things, and I can educate at the same time I'm marketing, and I love that. So.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. So check it out in a restaurant, doctor's office, or dentist's office near you.
Yes.
You'll be seeing that Start Healthy magazine. So it's been a whirlwind this week. But and by the way, we went to Zucchini's for your birthday.
Oh, that's right. Last week. Yeah, we went to Zucchini's. It was delicious. We love zucchinis.
And what do we have for dessert? That was an amazing dessert.
What the heck was that dessert? I think it was a carrot cake.
Some sort of carrot cake.
Yeah, it was like a carrot cake.
It was phenomenal.
Really good. Yeah.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, right now, I want to tell you that if you comment, react, or share our live video, you are in the running. And Angel's going to make sure I hit this correct. It's a mala, I believe it is.
Mala beads.
Is it mala beads? So Angel Black is here. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me tonight. I'm happy to be here. Excited to talk about this topic.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited because I walked in to the space here on the second floor at 222 South Street, and Angel is putting together her space.
And we haven't seen it yet until
Yet.
tonight.
And it is amazing. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think that I'm excited not only to be offering this service, and I was a longtime Berkshire native. I moved away for a long time. It's nice to be back. It's nice to be back and working with people in our community. It's great to be with you guys in this space. So there's a lot of really cool things going on at once.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me about your specialty. Hypnosis.
Yeah.
And I think, just right off the bat, I'm sure there's a lot of people who have instant ideas about what that means, and I'm sure there are many different types of specializations in regard to this specialization. So tell me about this, and actually tell me how it all began for you.
Sure. So I am a clinical hypnotherapist, and I'm also what's called a medical support hypnotherapist. So they call me a clinical medical support hypnotherapist.
Say that 5 times.
I know, it's a long title.
Yeah.
But essentially, you're so right, John. I mean, when we think of hypnosis, I think that it is becoming a more mainstream concept, and people do have more exposure to it. And I think that therapeutically, there's been so many advances made in the last decade or so. So I do think it's becoming more common. But essentially, I work with people to not only help them learn self-hypnosis and to work together with me using hypnosis therapeutically, but I work with people on a variety of issues and goals. And so we do talk about being very goal-focused and oriented in a session and throughout the many sessions that people may do. But we also work with healing, and we can get into that a little bit more in depth on that, because I do really, I feel I have a lot of passion about the medical support piece of the hypnotherapy.
Well, here's the thing. So, I mean, just the fact that it's clinical and medical, we're not talking about those people who go to a college campus and go on stage and have students do ridiculous things, which I think many of us have seen that before, and it's funny and it's humorous, but there's a clear purpose to this, and even beyond therapeutic. I mean, we're talking about clinical, so that's a whole other level.
Yeah, and actually, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I have to tell you that I will tell you that the very first introduction and experience that I had with hypnosis was a stage hypnotist. His name was James Mapes. He used to come to the BCC campus. When I was a teenager, my parents actually took me to go see his show. And he did hypnotherapy too, and a lot of people didn't know that. But one of the things that James did is he would bring people on all the stuff, the stage hypnosis stuff. He'd bring people up on stage. He'd pull people out of the audience. He would do suggestions with people in the audience to sort of see who was more susceptible or less, or who was really, kind of following along with him, bring them on stage. And I was one of those people as a teenager. And I remember being on stage and like dancing like Michael Jackson and like all this funny stuff. But at the end of it, and so I had that experience, but it was really all in good fun. Yeah. But at the end of it, after he took people through all the comedy and just a good time out with the family, after you went through all of that, at the end of it, he did a past life regression. He talked about some of his clinical medical support cases that he'd worked on. One of the stories that he used to tell was about a little girl who had been injured, and while she was being loaded into an ambulance, a paramedic said, "Oh, she'll never use that arm again." She never used it until she did hypnotherapy with James, and he was able to help her. And so that was one of my early introductions, is I actually did learn about hypnosis through stage hypnosis, but also through somebody who really used that to help people medically, clinically. He worked with cancer patients, worked with people who had lots of deep trauma, etc. But fast forward many years later, much older as an adult, I actually had gone to Arkansas to study with a woman named Dolores Cannon. And she was a very famous hypnotist and hypnotherapist who developed her own unique style called quantum healing hypnosis technique. And her technique is a little bit esoteric, very much based in ideas surrounding past life regression, etc. And so that was my first professional exposure, was working with this particular woman. So that was a great experience. I had my own very moving experiences doing my own inner work, working through past life regression, etc. But several years after that, I had a very, very intimate and personal experience with hypnotherapy. I had learned about, so like I said, I had done a little bit of the study with Dolores, etc. And I had learned about a place in New Mexico, the Hypnotherapy Academy of America, and the really good work that they were doing there. And at the same time, in my personal life, my husband at the time was very ill. And we knew he was very ill, but we didn't know what was wrong with him. And he had been to many, many doctors. We'd been to all kinds of specialists. He ended up being very lucky to be a patient at Mayo Clinic. Turned out that they did discover he had a very unique, rare, and slow-growing type of cancer. And while we were sort of going through the discovery process, it took 2 years for him to be diagnosed, so very slow-growing, and they would think that there was 12 cases in the world documented, right, at the time, so very rare, very difficult to diagnose. And while we were going through that, I just had this inner, deep, sense and knowing that we absolutely had to go to New Mexico. We have to go to New Mexico. We have to go. You have to be there. You have to come with me, right? So I'm saying this, and I'm thinking, dear God, my poor husband is probably thinking I'm like a lunatic. But I dragged him down there, and I'll never forget. He was able to work with one of the directors there of the school while I went through the training. So he did significant work there in hypnotherapy himself. And then when we came back, after being there all summer, we came back, and he went through something where it was kind of a medical mystery. He was in intense pain. We had to rush him to the hospital. They had to do an exploratory surgery on him. And I never forget, so this is the kind of very intimate experience that I had that kind of just blew my mind, and it's before I was doing the work professionally, but it profoundly affected me and made me know that this was the right thing to pursue. So poor husband's in the hospital. They're doing this exploratory surgery. They've got his abdomen open. They can't figure out what the intense pain is. They know that his body's in extreme distress. The surgeon, I'm in the waiting room crying, right? Surgeon comes out and gets me, great surgeon, gentleman, the kind, really good bedside manner, been doing it a long time, came out and talked to me in the most gentle way that he could, but essentially said, your husband, is the nicest way that he could, may die. He came out and he said to me, his body's in so much distress, his heart is racing, all of his vitals are in the danger zone. We can't get him to calm down. His body's in extreme pain. We can't, we've given all of the medication that we could give up until now. We've even given the maximum dose of ketamine. And for people who don't know, when you give narcotic pain medication, it depresses your respiratory. That's why people OD on opiates, because they stop breathing because their respirations are depressed. So they had given them the maximum amount of opiates they could give them. Then they move on to ketamine because ketamine doesn't depress the respiratory rate. So the doctor was like, we're completely maxed out on what we can give him. The next thing I can do is it would end up putting him in a medical coma. I'd have to intubate him. He will not be able to breathe on his own. He may never come back from that. So the doctor said to me, can you come back in and see your husband? Probably just thinking I'm going to say my last piece to him, right? Or be with him, and hopefully it would help him pull through. So at the time, my mother-in-law was with me, and she did Reiki. So she came in and she immediately put her hands on his feet and started to do Reiki. And I sat next to I'll never forget, it gives me chills when I tell people the story. I sat next to my husband, And I looked at the doctor who was on one side of his head, and then there was an anesthetician, or the anesthesiologist. Anesthesiologist is at the head, right, of the head of the bed, and I'm on the other side. So there's three of us kind of at the head of the bed, and then the mother-in-law at the bottom of the bed. And I was watching the monitors and watching all of the vitals that they said were in such the danger zone. And I said to the doctor, I need you to tell me what his body needs to do. This is medical support hypnotherapy, right? We know what the body's doing, and we know what the ideal is that we need the body to do, right? So I remember I had just gone through the training in the school, and I remember clear as day, I said, to myself, what would Tim say, my mentor and teacher? What would he say? And I listened to the surgeon. So the surgeon would say to me, well, his heart's racing and it needs to beat slower. And so I would give the suggestion. So I sat next to my husband and I gave the suggestion. Your heart is beating more slowly now. You have everything that you need inside you to heal. Your body is intuitively taking over. Your heart rate is it's decreasing. It's a slow, strong, steady heartbeat. And so the surgeon would just tell me what needed to happen, and I would just put it into the suggestion. And all of us just sat there and we just watched the monitors just come right back. It's where they needed to be.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And later, and when he woke up from that, later on, what he said was, I saw the light, I had the choice, I decided not to go. So just, going through that alone has really kind of lit a fire under me, because not only was I part of it and I saw it, and it, it really shaped and changed my life in a big personal way. So fast forward a few years, and here I am now.
So there's a lot to unpack there, but let's get to comments real quickly, and then we'll get back to the story. And lots of hello, angels. Trish Descanio saying hello. Susan Corn-Coldis says, great idea, Cara, on the magazine. That is very, very cool.
Thank you.
And Rebecca Liz says, yay, Angel. Diane Koner Stevens, I hope I said that right. Hi, Angel. Good luck. You got this. And she does. And she's doing really great, not only on this show, but also in business and in her profession. And my mom, Bev Krol, says, can everyone be hypnotized? So we'll get to that in a little bit. Joanna May says, yay, hi, Angel and John and Cara. Nicole March says, Cara, she's a gem. And Trish Descanio says, Dolores Cannon, my most favorite person in the universe, very impressed. And Anna Marinero says, wow, Dolores. And Adams Knoll says, wow, that is such a personal and powerful story. Thank you for sharing. So I think I got through all those, and I hope I didn't skip any. As they're coming in pretty quickly. But again, everyone who comments and who shares and likes the live video is in the running. And let me just quickly get a photo of this, because I have it. You can also hold it up, I think. Is that mala? Is the mala there? So, go ahead. Cara is going to hold that up there.
So these are, do you want to just explain?
Yeah.
Because they're so beautiful.
So this is just a set of beads. It's a traditional set of beads called a mala. So they come from sort of an ancient Sanskrit and Buddhist tradition. They're used all over the world. They've been used for thousands of years through meditation. I use them with my clients, because every one of the people that I work with, each and every client that I have, is taught self-hypnosis. And that's partial. It's twofold. So part of it is because it's an ethics thing for me, that this isn't something that I should save to myself, that I should keep under wraps, and that you have to pay a lot of money to see a professional. We're teaching people the skill of how to access and use their mind for positive change, and that's something that every person in the entire world should have full access to, and it's a skill set everybody should have. Now, certainly deeper, more complex issues, things that might need several sessions, there's a real benefit to working with a coach or working with a hypnotherapist, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn the skill and take that home with you. And so I have those available to my clients, and that's why, is we actually use them. So what happens is we work on some suggestions together, and then when you go home, you're going to do those suggestions. So a lot like you would do an affirmation, We know that one of the ways that the subconscious mind accepts suggestion, right? We do a lot of suggestion therapy. We can get into what that is. But one of the ways that the subconscious mind is able to accept a suggestion is through real repetition. And so saying our suggestion over and over again, we use the set of malas to go around, and when you say it, go to the next bead, say it, much like a rosary, and you know that you've gotten to the end because there's a little tassel there. And so that's just a tool that I use with my clients, and that's why we made that available to everybody.
Let's talk about the framework there. As you mentioned, suggestion, and there is power in the subconscious, and I think subconscious, and I would say that, like Dolores Cannon would also say, hey, the power of suggestion, the law of attraction, these things, like you put it out there, and if you believe it, it becomes a reality. So tell me about hypnosis and what it's actually doing. And I think we were having this conversation before, Cara, where we said, is that in the beta or the theta?
Yeah.
And Cara's like, well, we're not gonna. Yeah. I'm like, I'm gonna go with beta or whatever. There's because there's different levels.
Well, there's different levels, yeah. And so really, when we talk about hypnosis, what we're talking about, and I often refer to it as just a positive healing state of mind. But essentially, hypnosis, it just means that we're in a state of relaxation and deep focus. And we all go through, as you mentioned, alpha, beta, theta. We all go through different stages of various levels of relaxation throughout the day. So as we wake up in the morning and as we go to sleep at night, we pass through a state of mind that's actually called the hypnagogic state. It's that, when you're like almost falling asleep and you're about to be sleeping,
we
but
hear about
you're
this
still
quite a bit.
kind of awake, right? But
like
you
everybody
kind
talks
of start
about
to
this.
dream.
Just this part where, but just before you could fall asleep, and just when you're waking up, you're not really fully conscious, but it's that middle ground. And allegedly, that's very, very powerful. I mean, you'll tell me that it's very, very, very powerful.
It is. Because
you're
what's
the expert.
happening there is that, so when we think about the mind, right, we all have this piece of our, and when you talk about the mind and as from a perspective of hypnosis or hypnotherapy, we're talking about the mind as if it's a field. So not our brain, not the organ, right? We would actually say that the brain is an organ of the mind, right? And so the mind being a field, that's bigger than just the brain, right? And so when we talk about that, we've got different parts of the mind. We have our conscious mind, and that's the part of the mind that does the analytical work. It's a really important piece of the mind. It's the piece of the mind that does questioning, that does critical thinking, that organizes things, and it's an important part of the mind. But then we also have something called the critical factor. Critical factor of the mind isn't developed in people until they're about 7 to 11 years of age. And that's the piece of the brain that takes, when we have input coming in, right? We have input coming in. It hits the conscious brain. There's this piece in the conscious brain or the conscious mind called the critical factor. And the critical factor's job is basically to take that input and say to the subconscious mind, right? Subconscious mind is it's the underlying, or it's the doer. We call it the doer of the mind. It's what runs our autonomic nervous system. It's where dreams occur. It speaks in images, right? It's not the conscious brain, but it's what's really running the show all the time.
Isn't that amazing?
I
just want to stop right there, because if you were under normal circumstances, most people would say, well, no, I'm in control because my mind's here, right, in the frontal lobe or what have you. I'm in control. But it's so much deeper than that.
And they wouldn't be wrong to say that they're in control.
Sure,
they would be correct, but it's not necessarily all coming from that conscious brain, right? The conscious part is the part that we're aware of. Right, the subconscious is really is like the doer. It's the behind the scenes, right? So Wizard of Oz, you pull back the curtain, it's the it's the behind the curtain stuff. And so when we receive that input, that stimulus, the situation that's occurring, the conversation we're having, whatever it is that's happening in the outside world, that stimulus comes in, hits the critical factor, and the critical factor of the mind basically does this. It goes, hey, wait a second. Do we have information, right? Is there a program, right, running in the subconscious? Do we have information that tells us how to react to this? Do we, if that situation that is occurring has occurred before, right? So whether it's whatever that it may be, if it's occurred before, right, that means that in our subconscious mind we have a program that tells us how to react. If it's new and it's never happened before, right, critical factor goes, oh, there's nothing in the storage banks. We don't know how to handle this. And it kicks that stimulus back up to the conscious mind. And then that's where we do our work. We're weighing the pros and cons. What kind of a decision do we got to make? That's where analytical thinking, critical thinking, all of those things take place. It's really important for us. But in hypnotherapy, what we want to do is we're like, hey, when those things are occurring, and that critical factor is doing a deep dive back there to check the files to see how we're supposed to react. What's in the file? Like, do you know what's in your files, right? And if we don't like the outcome of how our behavior, right? So critical factor is like, hey, we have a file on this. We know exactly what to do. It's an automatic response. Boom, boom, boom. Like, we just react. Well, what if the way that we're reacting is causing issues? What if we're not liking the outcome? What if we're taking a look around in our life and we go, this is uncomfortable. I don't really like that, right? We know in therapeutic, and not just hypnotherapy, all kinds of therapy, we know in a therapeutic setting that people show up for two reasons. And one is much more common than the other. People show up to therapy when they're existentially bored, and that's the rarer of the two. Why am I here? What's the purpose of life? Right? That's the rarer. And the more
it must be nice to for that to be your biggest issue.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
Right.
But there are people that are deeply disturbed
Sure.
by those questions. Right.
I don't mean to make light of it.
But you're right.
That is the rare
and that's
version.
the more rare version.
Yeah.
The more rare reason. But the other reason that people show up in therapeutic environments is, I've suffered enough, right? I'm done suffering. I don't want to suffer anymore. So when we take a look around in our lives and we realize that we're not liking the outcome of our behavior, right? We have to take a look and we go, okay, in the hypnotherapeutic setting, we're going to say to you, let's figure out what's in those files that's driving the behavior. And even more than that, we want to get in touch with the emotions that are surrounding the behaviors, and that will help us read the files. And then we talk about suggestion therapy. When people are in a state of hypnosis, just a relaxed and focused state, you actually have more control over your mind than you do in conscious waking life. So, and the reason for that is because, and this is a common misunderstanding about altered state in general, right? Hypnosis is an altered state. It's an altered state that's just really is a result of relaxation and focus. But the misconception that commonly occurs is that we're leaving the conscious mind behind, that we're just going to be talking to the subconscious. But the truth is, in hypnosis, you have access to both. You have access to the conscious mind, and you have access to the subconscious. And we actually take things a step further. I practice a particular type of hypnotherapy called integral hypnotherapy, which is just a system of techniques that's been organized by the person who created it. And it's a combination of ancient wisdom and ancient technique combined with the most up-to-date modern hypnosis techniques. And so it's just it's a blending of the two. So we're pulling from the best modern science that we have, but also things from 3,000 years ago, right? Because it worked then and it's still working. And so at any rate, we want to go in and just kind of read those files, figure out what those are. Suggestion therapy is simply a technique to work collaboratively, and this is really important, and it's a very specific way that I work with clients when we do suggestion therapy. Almost always in the beginning of doing work together, we're going to start with suggestion therapy, which is essentially, it's a re-education process of the mind, and it's a flooding of the mind with positive healing ideas in order to rewrite what's in those programs.
And that has to be pretty powerful stuff, because a lot of that is ingrained heavily from childhood, which and I'm sure you could speak to this. I have to assume that so much of that is ingrained from childhood. I'm not talking just trauma. We're just talking about behaviors. We're talking
just
about experiences,
stuff.
Everyday stuff. I mean, Cara, you see it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
As a teacher, those experiences are powerful, especially
learned
for
experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. So we know, like I said, we talked about this critical factor, this part of the mind that either accepts an idea or rejects it, right, and sends it back up to conscious mind. To reevaluate. Well, we know that doesn't exist in children until they're somewhere between 7 and 11 years old. And we also know that there's many ways that our subconscious mind automatically and easily can accept what we kind of deem as programming, but it's beliefs, right? A belief. So some of the ways that we accept beliefs as humans, or we create these beliefs, is when a peer, when you're a child, and not even children, but adults do it too. Just that children are more susceptible because up until that 7 to 11 age group, they don't have the ability to reject an idea. Everything that you take in up until that age group, it's just soaked in there, and you just soak it up, and it's
like
just digested. It's just like little sponges. And so the mind just has all of these ideas, right? Then another way that happens is through an authority figure. So, and adults do that as well. You go to the doctor, and a lot of the work that we do, honestly, one of the first things that we do if we work with somebody who's coming in for healing, who's got a diagnosis, is we start to ask questions about the diagnosis. Tell me about the day you were diagnosed. Tell me what exactly did the doctor say? We might say we might do that before we go into a session, but we also might say, okay, close your eyes, and do the induction, and actually enter into that state of hypnosis, and regress back to the day that they were given the diagnosis, and do real work on changing how that was delivered, because it was delivered by an authority figure. Doctor says to you, well, this is very rarely healed. You'll probably have it for the rest of your life, right? So that's like a very clear and obvious place to start to do some work. Another way that we do that is we can say yes to an idea, right? So we can just decide that we agree with an idea. And and it can also happen through repetition. So even though we might initially be rejecting an idea, the more that idea is repeated, and we've heard that, the how many times does a teacher have to say X, Y, Z to a child until it's really done real damage. So those are all ways that we kind of accept ideas, and then my job is to sort of help people start. What we do is we have a model, and we kind of say, okay, well, we're looking at an outcome of a behavior, right? And the behavior is attached to an emotion. And really, we talk about emotions. I do a lot of educating around emotions with my clients, because the way that we define that is an emotion is just a thought traveling through the body. An emotion starts with a thought. It's the chemical, and I'm not a doctor, but you could maybe speak to this more than me, but it's the chemical reaction, it's the neurotransmitters, it's all of the things that are happening, it's the neurological response that you have to a thought.
Right.
To a thought. And the thought is what's sitting in the subconscious brain. It's that programming that's in the files. And so it's my job to really help people get in there and work on that stuff.
And Eileen Rockefeller says, hello, everyone.
Hi,
Learning
Eileen.
here tonight. So Eileen is in the running for Mala. A set of Mala beads. Hello, everybody. This is Dolores Wright. I'm so amazed at the story of fact and the whole story that Angel shared of her background and how this all began for her, for sure. Trish Descanio says, April, you have such knowledge and passion. Very interesting.
I think she meant Angel there.
That's okay.
Maybe it was spelled
Did I
check.
say April?
No.
Angel.
We know what you all mean.
I'm just reading what I'm reading. Okay, so and Carol Majedeski says, hello, Angel, John, and Cara. Love
Hi,
Dolores
everybody.
Cannon. Have followed her and her daughter for years. She is still doing her work on the other side for sure. Enjoying the podcast.
We should plug that book. So Dolores Cannon's daughter's name is Julia Cannon, and for anybody that's interested, Soul Speak is a very interesting book that was written by Dolores Cannon's daughter, who's a nurse or was a nurse.
Yes. And I think we have this book. You have that book, right? Well, no, you have
great
one
book.
of the books, one of the Dolores Cannon books. I know
One of the book. I don't think it's that one.
Well,
Journey.
Dolores
No,
had
is it
quite a
Journey
few.
of the
I don't know
Soul?
how many she has, but like
Yeah.
15 or something. I don't know how. I don't want to even say I've said, but
Yeah, there's a lot.
there's a lot of books that Dolores wrote.
So there's a couple things that I wanted to hit on, and by the way, everyone who's watching, do me a favor, give the video a like. That helps us with the algorithm and the reach of the video, and please do share if you're so inclined. past life regressions is one of the things. I don't know what you want to hit
We can talk
first.
about that.
And then also this concept of self-hypnosis. So, I want to dig deeper into that, because maybe tonight we give some people some tools that will be helpful to them. Obviously, we want them to come to you as a professional and do all that. But that whole level that we've talked about, and again, that whole time before you go to sleep and when you wake up, some tools maybe you can do during that time. But then generally, what are some things that people can do to start to tap into that power?
Okay, which one do we want to talk first? Do you want to do past life regression first?
Sure.
You said that one first.
I did.
So let's talk about that. So I do a lot of different kinds of regression with people, and it really where the work takes us is dependent upon the needs of the person. For the most part, when somebody comes in and they say to me, Angel, I want to work on A, B, or C, past life regression is probably not the first thing that I'm not like, oh great, let's go to a past life, right? But it doesn't mean that it's not a powerful tool. And the Dolores Cannon, for the people, there are people that are familiar with Dolores, that they've been kind of throwing that out tonight. For the people that are familiar with Dolores, her work really hinged on taking people through several past lives. So let me just explain the way that I work with people and the way that I see that. So when people come in and they're talking about wanting to do a past life regression, I always explain this. I always say to them that my ultimate goal with all of my people is we're mining for gold. And for me, the gold is healing. So we're looking to help them heal, whether they're healing their mind, they're healing their emotions, they're healing their spiritual body. It doesn't matter. People are looking to stop suffering. And when we stop suffering, we're entering that realm of healing. And so some people feel that when they do a past life regression session, that they're truly going back into another place in time that they've lived before, that they're actually accessing memories from a lifetime that occurred whoever, wherever, right? Whoever they were, whatever time period that they were. And some people feel like maybe it's just a movie, right? Like you're playing a movie.
Or maybe it's something your subconscious made up or something.
Exactly,
or,
like a dream.
But whatever it is.
But whatever it is, right, exactly.
It's something.
It's something. And all of the work that we do as hypnotherapists really hinges on this foundational belief that you are your own best healer. And so that's where that comes from. So you are your own best healer. So whether you really lived that other lifetime or you're just having like a dream experience that has knowledge, right? We know that the subconscious mind speaks to us in images. It doesn't use words and language. It uses imagery and emotion. It's the seat of the emotion. It's a seat of emotion. So regardless of what's actually occurring in that past life, it's really important for me as the hypnotherapist to not just take you through a little journey and say, well, that was fun. Well, we're right. Well, sometimes it's not fun.
Right.
Right. We're looking exactly.
Because part of it also is that at some point in your past life you die, because you don't get to this life until you die in the previous life. So sometimes that's not fun.
Right. And so we go through all those experiences, and we typically do review. We will review a death, right? And we will look at that because those are experiences that can have a real impact on people in their modern day life. But the point of all of that journeying, all of that regression is truly to bring healing forward for the person. There may be lessons in there. There may be information in there. So everybody's going to be a little bit different. And then interestingly enough, and I think this is maybe a little bit more, because I think that past life regression is sort of something that people do get really excited about. They've heard about it. It's really interesting to explore it. But I also do interlife regression and natal regression. And those are things that I think are a little bit less common. Dolores's work, she did talk about interlife regression because she had people that's just where they would land, right? So could go back and they'd go, I'm just floating. right? I'm just energy. I'm a star, right? I'm not, whatever it is. My job is to make the stars. Well, I'm just energy. I'm not in a body. So that's a real thing that occurs. And then it's also very interesting to do natal regression with folks where they're in the womb and they're revisiting and re-experiencing some of the things that were in the womb, because we know at that point that at least anecdotally, I don't know what the real data says on this, but we know at least anecdotally that there's enough evidence anecdotally to suggest that the experiences that fetuses have, right, can have a real true impact on their lives. So that's another place that sometimes people need to do some work. And the client will typically be directing that. The client's going to know, and that the subconscious mind knows where to go to find the information that we need. And then the other kind of regression that we do, that's probably the most common type of regression that I do. Past life is a lot of fun. It's really interesting. It's exciting. People always get excited about it. But the more commonly, the types of regression we're going to do is probably get to do some analytical hypnotherapy work, and that's where we revisit things that we actually call it a critical incident or a sensitizing incident. That you talked about it, John, the trauma, the childhood trauma, the everyday stuff, all of the things that have created the programs that are running now. And in analytical hypnotherapy work, which I do practice, we would go back and review some of those things and oftentimes talk with the figure. I would say to a client, put that person in a chair in front of you. That person is here now. We're going to talk to them. Maybe now you're going to be that other person, right? And you're going to have that conversation so that we can work through some of that trauma and some of that healing.
And I just think overall, people are fascinated by the richness of what is underneath. And I think Cara can speak to this also, because you find that in your energy work when you do La Ho Chi.
Yep.
So things that come out, it's not anything that people experience in a conscious way, but there's some real depth there.
There is. It's and you never know. I always tell people when they go into an energy session, you can't really have any expectations because you don't know where they're going to end up. So some people may experience a past life when we do energy work. Some people may experience just seeing colors and imagery and things like that. So my clients will usually guide that, and then we'll go through the healing session, and it's quiet. We just music is playing, no one's talking, and then at the end we talk about their experience and my experience, and so it can go anywhere really, and it's the client guiding that session, and so sometimes we have conversations, and it could be that a person is kind of flying through ancient Egypt, and they're
Lemuria. Was that?
Well, I did energy work. Yes, I did energy work on John, and he didn't necessarily see it, but I saw Lemuria. He was.
It's funny because and some people really are connected to it and they see things, and other people. And I did some past life regression work before, and it took practice as the client, because that's the right way to describe it, to really trust it, because the things that pop, for some people it comes very easy. They see an image, it comes to them easy. They see it in their mind's eye, or they see it, however they see it in their own experience, and it's there. But I think for some people it takes a while for them to practice and start to trust those inklings or that intuition, or some of that they're seeing in their mind's eye, and you probably experienced that.
And like you mentioned before, sometimes it takes a few sessions for people.
Well, I would say I would say this to speak to that, because I think that's a good point, Cara, for sure, and also to speak to what John said. Well, two things. So hypnosis is definitely a skill that anybody can learn. So Bev, anybody can learn that skill. I know she asked. It's a skill like anything else. So I always talk about, a lot of folks are very familiar with meditation, and there's lots of different kinds of meditation. In meditation, though, not always, because there's guided meditation, but in many forms of meditation, the goal is to empty the mind, to still the mind, to quiet the mind. With hypnosis, it's not so much to quiet the mind, it's to be in control of the mind, right? And one of the things that I think happens, and this may be similar to what you were describing, John, is that there's an expectation often when folks come in, they're like thinking they're going to close their eyes and they're going to check out, and I'm just going to stand over them and I'm going to do the programming, right? Like, ooh, we're just like putting it in there. Like, here it is. We're sprinkling it in.
Yes. And that's exactly what we want. I'm just kidding.
But there is sort of a thought, right? That I think that is something that some people think. You're
gonna make me do Michael Jackson moves up on a stage, all that stuff.
but it can be real work, and I think that one of the things that can occur is that when somebody enters into an altered state, there's sort of an expectation, like I said, that they're going to be like asleep, like that they're going off somewhere, that they're going to go off into some other, and that they're basically asleep, and that things will happen to them. But that's very different than what really happens in a hypnotherapy session. So in a hypnotherapy session, the conscious brain, the conscious mind, but that part of the brain, that conscious mind might be really right there as an observer. It may not be participating, but it might actually be sitting right there observing everything, and it almost has a little commentary sometimes, right? So the subconscious is playing the movie, and the conscious brain's going, "Is this a real movie? Why is this the movie? What are we doing here? Where are we going? Are you really going somewhere?"
I think that's a really great point because like in past life regression, I think that's a good explanation.
And John experienced past life regression. I have not done that yet. John has done that, so he has a lot of experience.
So I think that is a good description. Is you're sort of that observer. Whereas I think, like you said, some people want to fall asleep, have a recording of it later, and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I said all that stuff." That's exactly what a lot of people. But
your conscious, we don't really remove the conscious mind. The conscious mind never really goes anywhere. Sometimes we make it busy because sometimes for some people the conscious mind's very active, and it's the ego mind, right? So it wants to be involved. It wants to feel important. So sometimes we need to give it a little job. So maybe the conscious mind is counting some numbers, or, we're actually giving it a task. But those things are designed, and they're very intentionally created and designed to keep the conscious mind active and busy, and to give it a job, and to maybe just sort of distract it. But I do think that is something that occurs. You'll hear people sometimes say, "I'm not really sure if the hypnosis worked. I'm not really sure if it was working." And yet they could answer all the questions. They could see all the images. They were actively participating. The reason people think that is because they think that the conscious mind is supposed to check out and go somewhere. But the truth is we want you to have access to all of it. Right? So you really are in control, right? You really are in control. You really are a very active participant. And that part of the mind is simply, as you said, can be just an observer, or it can have a job to do. It's whatever really is needed by for that particular client. And some people do go much deeper into the altered state than others. For myself, I can enter and this is what the level of work that Dolores was really famous for doing. Her technique, her sessions are like 3 hours long. It's a very long, drawn out, deeper and deeper. You're all the way in what's called the somnambulistic state, which is as relaxed as you can be without actually being asleep. And she was famous for working with people at that depth. But you don't have to do that to have great success. That's just one of many ways.
By the way, when Angel is speaking, I'm kind of dipping almost into a little beta theta.
I was going to say definitely. I've been sitting here and I'm like, oh my gosh. You know what I mean?
She's really good at it because she's had a lot of practice. So you have that kind of you're getting sleepy kind of. So she's very, very good at it. And Dawn Burnell knows that. She says, "Congratulations to my biggest achievement. Very happy to see you following your passion. Love you, Mom."
Thanks, Mom.
We love it. Moms chime in on the program for sure. So with that, let's talk about how people can work on this themselves and do some self-hypnosis, if that's the right description.
Yeah, that's the right description.
So what are some of the first things they should think about or tools that they can use?
Yeah, and it's a really good question, John. I'm going to give twofold. I'm going to give two different things that folks can do at home. So one of the things that is really big these days, right? Really, everybody's talking about manifesting.
Mm-hmm.
How big is that? That's like the
Huge.
biggest topic.
And
right?
it works.
And it works, right? We know that it works.
Yep.
We're here, right?
We're all
Yes.
here.
We're in this beautiful space. We
Yep.
all manifested together.
A lot sooner than we thought. Yep.
Well, how many times have we heard, it's working for us, right?
Yeah.
We're working through, but how many times have we heard from others, how do you do it? How do you manifest? Or I'm trying to manifest. And, right, that's also a common thing. So one of the things that I talk a lot about for people is that we'll just use money as an example, because who doesn't want to manifest money?
Sure.
Who's not trying to manifest
That's probably
money?
the biggest
Hottest topic.
manifesting thing.
Right, the biggest thing, right? Yes.
Manifest the money.
That manifest the money. So we have to think about the fact that we have these programs that are running in the subconscious mind, and that everything we ever do in life is because of the program that's running, right? So when folks talk about and they say things like, I'm trying to manifest money and it's not working for me. Why isn't it working for me? I'm doing all the things, right? So I could certainly help somebody design some suggestions, right, around manifesting money. And we could say, okay, here you go. Every night before you go to sleep and as you're waking up, you're going to say these affirmations. You're going to do this suggestion therapy with yourself. However, here's the key to that. If we've got a program running in the background, right? So so let me give you a couple examples. The beliefs are people who have a lot of money are fill in the blank, right? Whatever it may be. We've got a if I had a lot of money, that would mean this about me, right? Fill in the blank. So having that kind of a conflicting thought that's not in congruence with the goal is probably the biggest reason I think people have difficulty with manifesting or difficulty with affirmations. So when I say twofold, give two parts, any affirmation or suggestion that somebody would want to put into their own subconscious mind, which is what essentially hypnotherapy is, right? Would need to be in congruence with the underlying programming,
which is a deep lack mentality that probably comes from childhood, because traditionally growing up, especially if you had a family that struggled with money, that's what you experienced, from your parents, from messaging, and you hear about, we don't have enough damn money doesn't grow on trees, or this or that, all of those things that have a negative attachment to this thing that's money, and money is the root of all evil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All those things.
Right. So I always tell people that absolutely we can utilize that time, that hypnagogic state, as we're falling asleep, as we're waking up, and we can do a few other things also. But it really starts with examining and looking at the belief systems that we're carrying. So one of the tools that I think anybody can do at home is to simply do some of those fill in the blanks like I just gave. So and a good one to do is this: the worst thought that I have about money, blank, or whatever that topic may be. And the reason I say that is because, again, we're looking for healing. We're looking for healing to occur. But if we don't know what the poison is, we don't know what the antidote is. And so in order to create the right, correct suggestion for somebody, we have to know what belief we're working with to begin with. Does that make sense? So that's something anybody can do. So journaling, I think, is an incredible tool and a great place to start. The worst feeling I have about money is...
and one of the worst things, by the way, happening in the schools is that kids are not writing things down, because there is a connection between the mind and everything, and when you write something down, that's different than typing.
I 100% agree.
Yep.
That's different than typing.
It's
So when you write things down, it's
mechanics,
powerful.
yeah.
It's powerful.
It is powerful.
So anyway, sorry for the sidebar.
I didn't know that
soapbox.
they're just taking.
Well, they
writing
do.
away.
I mean, it depends.
Not as much. I mean,
yeah,
come on.
maybe when they're older, but younger kids write things down. They
Yeah.
don't always type, but the older kids mostly type.
Yeah.
But I agree, that's an incredibly important thing to preserve. But I do think that's a great place for people to start. So you want to look at, what do I want to improve, right? So what area am I trying to improve? And then we want to look at what are the worst things I think about this, right? So then we know what the poison is. We know what's poisoning us. And then once we know what the poison is that we're drinking, we're going to flip that. So we want to turn that around. So the worst thing I think about money is that, I don't know, one of you guys fill in the blank. What was be something? Fill in the blank.
That only shady people have money, because they cheat.
That's the kind of thing. Only shady people. The worst thing I think about money is that only shady people have money because they cheat, right? So then we want to look at that. We want to flip that, right? Good people have money. Money flows to those who deserve it. Money flows to me because I'm deserving, right? And so once we create those suggestions, and that's something that we do very collaboratively in session. That's not something that I do. It's actually a collaborative process. I actually hand a pencil to my client in those early sessions when we first get started and we're really focused on suggestion therapy. Who am I to tell you what your programming is going to be?
Right.
No. I'm going to help you get into the state, right? And we're going to do the work together. But it's something that every client is going to actually be not only helping and assisting creating those and learning how to create them at home, but in addition to that, they're going to be approving anything that is going to be programmed, right? And that's a really key thing. And I don't know that all hypnotherapists do that, but it is 100% part of my practice. And then as we wake up and as we close, we're opening our eyes in the morning and we're kind of half asleep, that's a great time. And I practice this regularly. I often don't put my hand over my heart, that just gives me sort of a sense of comfort. And I'll do my own affirmations. I love myself. I love my body, whatever it is that I'm programming for the day. And that's a great time to do those things. And it's also a great time to do that, as John mentioned, as you're starting to fall asleep at night, and even falling asleep saying them, and that's a wonderful tool. And then again, I teach all of my clients how to access these altered states in session too.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So are there certain times that people should do it, when they wake up or really any time that they have a quiet moment?
It's honestly anytime. And when my clients are working together with me and we're working through something, we're working on healing something, I'll tell them, you have a set of mala beads. They have wonderful little mala bracelets. You really don't need one to do it, but many people find that tactile, tangible, being able to hold something and sort of track, because again, remember what we talked about with the conscious mind, that moving bead to bead is another really good example of giving the conscious mind something to do. So the conscious mind's like, and next bead, oh, and we're to the end. Yeah, your subconscious mind is relaxed and open and receiving all of that. But when I'm working with somebody and we're working through, we're working on healing something, I'm like, anytime you can do it. Like, park your car, and before you get out of your car, do 2 rounds on your malas. Like, just wherever you are, anytime you can grab that, 30 seconds, a minute and a half, 3 minutes, because repetition is a powerful tool for this positive change to occur in the mind.
And so, as we have a couple minutes left, looking at this overall picture, and that is infusing hypnotherapy and maybe non-traditional clinical techniques into this world of Western medicine has got to be an interesting pathway, not only for you because you're focusing on the clinical side of things, but we have this conversation all the time in our over-medicated, and again, yes, Western medicine, we got to have it. There's a place for sure. It. But we had gone and have gone so far to one side. And again, these are techniques that have been in place for 3,000 years and practiced, whether it's La Ho Chi or hypnotherapy, Reiki, et cetera, all these things are very powerful. So I kind of want to say, like, where do you fit into all this? But I think things are actually changing. And I know we have some clinical people who are actually, when I say clinical people, that means they're either working in hospitals or so forth, who are actually, who watch our program and I'm sure are watching this right now. I think things have shifted even in the last few years.
Yeah, no, I love that part of this conversation because I do think things have changed quite a bit. I think people are very ready for this. I think that, how often are we now hearing people doctors, physicians, people online, people in our community talking about the healthcare system, and they're like, it's not a healthcare system, it's a sick care system, right? Because we're reactive as opposed to proactive. And I'll say that my mentor and teacher, when I studied with not only a gentleman that was a hypnotherapist. His background is that he was a paramedic. So he was a paramedic, and he was out there. So if you think about a paramedic, he was out there in the emergencies, right? Like real emergencies happening right now. And his path to bring him to hypnosis and hypnotherapy was, how do we prevent these emergencies? There's got to be something we can do before it's an emergency. So you're having a heart attack. How do we prevent the heart attack? Right? Yeah. And so how do we get ahead of it? So this technique is about being proactive, and it's really important to know and to talk about the fact that we're not here to replace, right? We're not instead of healthcare, but we're complementary to healthcare. And so this is an integrative wellness approach. This is an integrative technique. And for all of the healthcare professionals who are out there listening, and anybody who's under the care of a healthcare professional, one of the things that happens when you do come in and there is potentially something medical. So one of the things, we can work on many, many different medical issues, but we certainly can't treat or diagnose. So we have a scope of practice like any other healthcare professional would. And what happens with me is you come in, and let's say you come in and you have migraines. You're like, Angel, can you help me with migraines? Well, we can work together, but we need to make sure that you're being treated that you're being looked at and cared for by a healthcare provider who has a scope of practice for treating migraines. We want to make sure that all of the proper testing is in place. And how we do that is we actually would do an actual medical release. We would actually bring the healthcare professional on board. We'd actually have a discussion with them if they're open to it or they want to have the discussion about the types of techniques that are used and how we might work together. And there are times where a healthcare professional or a like a psychotherapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist might have limitations on the work that we do in hypnotherapy, and that's important. And so they're always going to be there to be part of the team, right? So we're always going to want to open that door, have the conversation, fill out the medical releases, etc.
And again, under normal circumstances, migraines, right now, it may be that the medical professional, the first thing they go to is a medication. And so I think we're starting to change that. I mean, Cara, we've seen that. I mean, I'm not going to share personal stories, but generally in the medical system, again, the first go-to is a medication.
Right. And there are obviously alternatives, and I do have experience with that. And so for my daughter, I sought out the medical professionals, and we went through all of the necessary EEG, MRI, all of that to rule out any underlying issues. And once we did, I opted out of the medication and I went to alternative therapies, which got rid of her headaches for years. They just started to come back, so we're going to go revisit. But for years, she's been migraine free. So yeah. And we do know, and this is something that can be documented, that can be reproduced. We know that for every thought, there's actually a neurological, anatomical, our bodies actually react. And it's really an interesting thing. I worked with somebody not too long ago, actually a couple of years ago, had some real back issues, right? Chronic backaches, back pains, feels like he's throwing his back out, doesn't understand, I'm brushing my teeth and I'm throwing out my back. Well, we're not just really brushing our teeth, so we do a regression, right? So we look back. So let's go, travel back to the time where you're brushing your teeth, right? And so we go back and we talk about it and we process. Well, what's on your mind, right? What are you thinking about? Well, I'm prepping for my day. Okay, well, and say more about that. I'm stressed. Okay, say more about that, right? And so we start talking through the sequence of thought processes that are actually happening at the very moment that the back gets thrown out. Well, it's no wonder with all the things all the stress and the things that are, and all the thoughts that we uncovered, that of course you probably were tensed, right? So we're tensing muscles. I mean, there's a true physiological response to the thoughts, right?
So it's just interesting that, of course, well, that makes total sense that we throw their back out when you're all clenched up like that and you're moving like this, right? And so we do some of that work with people.
Mm-hmm.
So Angel Black, what a great pleasure
yes.
it was to introduce you to the audience here and, of course, the space here. So, Cara, one day we're going to have a grand opening here.
We are. It's going to be this month in October. I wanted to give everybody some time to get ready, to get settled in, because we had certain types of furniture we needed to bring in and the spaces have to be set up. And so now we're getting there. We're like super close. So we'll be hosting a grand opening for family and friends. We'll be sending the invites out. So look forward to that. And definitely all of our viewers.
Yeah,
as
and
well.
Angel, how can people get in touch with you?
They will. It's not up yet. It's under construction, but I will be at www.angelblackhypnotherapy.com, so they can certainly find me there probably in a week and a half. But in the meantime, certainly they can reach out to me directly, 413-242-6604. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook as well. So all of those places I can be found.
And if you don't see her tagged in here somewhere, she'll be tagged also. So you can message her, through Facebook and get that website up and through phone. And, we'll be here by appointment.
And you can always contact us at Balance Bliss Wellness. Get in touch with us, and we can get you in touch with Angel as well.
Fantastic. So, what a pleasure.
Thank you.
Great conversation
so much.
tonight.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you both
Loved
very
it.
much. Yeah.
Loved it. So thank you, everyone, and everyone who commented and continues to comment on the live show. You'll be in the running for those mala. Let's get the intro now. The mala. I want to say bracelet, but it's not a bracelet.
Beads.
The set of beads.
Mala beads.
There you go. They're beautiful. They're amazing. So everyone who has commented and likes and shares the video will be in the running for those beautiful beads. And everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank you for tuning in. Great viewership tonight. Great comments.
Yes.
And we love you all.
Have a great